Welcome to Pepperl+Fuchs Plugged In, where automation professionals can stay in touch with the latest enhancements in sensing, data communication, and control.
Welcome, everybody, to our newest episode of Pepperl+Fuchs Plug-In. And today I have a guest that I've had on this channel before, Eduardo Bustillos. Hello, Eduardo.
Hi, Helga. Thank you for having me on again today.
No problem. I tell you what, when we talked earlier about the topic for the day, I thought that was rather interesting. So why don't you tell us what we're talking about?
So today we're going to talk about all the new design features for all of our M8 and M12 connectors that go on our cord sets and on our pigtails.
And that is a very large product offering.
Exactly, right. I mean, cord sets alone, we have about 3,000 cord sets that we make on our own. Plus, think about all the different sensors that we offer that have pigtails on them.
Yep. No, that's impressive. So let's get right into it. Why did we do a redesign in the first place? We had a nice product before.
Exactly, right. We had a good product before, but now it's going to be even better with this new redesign. It started with us wanting to have more control over the design and bring it more in-house. Now, with this new design, we have a lot more control over the manufacturing. We have a lot more flexibility. It makes us a lot more competitive, and it just gives us a much better product in the end.
And I think we'll be discussing a pretty significant number of small enhancements that end up making this product really outstanding.
Exactly. The small changes, they're greater than the sum of their parts. And how it started, we started from looking at some of our competitors, and from there we took a deep dive and picked out what we thought were important features to have on our own products.
So can I ask you to do this? Why don't you rattle down the 5 or 6 improvements, and then we chip away at them one at a time?
Definitely. So first, every little enhancement is because of a reason. The first general reason was, first we wanted to extend the lifetime of our cord sets and our connectors. Any user would be incredibly frustrated to have something fail or to have something just break out in the field because of poor quality connectivity. So the first goal was to increase the lifetime. First, there's much better protection against vibration, and that's because of a few different features. First,
why don't you go into those, please?
Sure. The contact carrier, which is the green potted little plastic piece inside the connector that holds the contacts, that holds the pins, that went through a whole redesign and really to extend the lifetime of the cord sets. The first one is this new version. It has a groove to hold the seal, to hold the O-ring inside of the connector, so it doesn't deform too much, so it doesn't fall out. And that's really the first enhancement to the contact carrier.
So essentially, we're capturing the O-ring that is so important to provide high IP protection.
Exactly. This new feature, it's a captive seal and it holds it in place. Maybe some of our competitors might just toss it in there, slap it in there, and there's nothing securing it in place. And even sometimes you'll see when you make the connection between a male and a female connector, if it's been sitting for a long time or if it's been installed on a machine, if you undo it, sometimes the seal kind of sticks to the male connector and then it gets pulled out.
And you pull the O-ring out. You pull the O-ring out.
Exactly, yeah. And then once that happens, the connector loses all IP protection. It can still make a connection and send signals, but it won't be durable. It won't be industrial. It would just be a basic
That's
connector.
Bad.
Right.
That's bad. So captured O-ring, very important. Okay, what's next?
The next feature is the actual contact carrier. Now it is a little bit longer. It has more actual like contact surface, more friction on the actual pins themselves, so it secures them better whenever they're in like a really high vibration environment. The pins and the contacts themselves are one of the most sensitive components inside the connector. So we really want them protected. We want the maximum like envelope around them, basically to hold them firm so they don't move at all. So this new contact carrier, it really holds them in place, especially in high vibration applications.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, our pins are, as they have always been, gold-plated pins.
That's right. Yep, they're gold plated pins. All of our cord sets have a 100% quality check for continuity and for current. So we really do have the gold standard on contacts and pins.
So you mentioned that vibration, or being able to deal with vibration, was one of the main reasons to redesign the contact carrier. But there's also something that happened on the locking nut.
Right. The locking nut is a little bit different too. So first, the locking nut now has these they're kind of like little teeth around the circumference on the inside of the nut. And basically as you tighten it, it will kind of feel sort of like a lock washer or a ratchet. And as you tighten it, it'll really, really hold the nut in place. So if it's in like another high vibration application, it won't loosen. It'll really stay in place.
Good, good. And do talk about, please, the outside appearance of that locking nut is also different than most everybody on the market.
Definitely. So one new feature of the locking nut, so not just inside where you can't really see the locking feature, on the outside, now not just the knurling on the nut, so now the nut will also have a wrench coupling. So a user could not just use their hands, they can use a wrench too. So that really makes it a lot simpler and a lot easier for the user. So the new nut, you can use either your hands or a wrench.
Okay. Now, I want to come back to the contact carrier. You did mention earlier on when you and I talked about the creep distances. Can you tell us what that is and what has been done?
First, let's talk about the creep distance. So the creep distance is the shortest distance between two conductors inside of the connector. And one thing we did, we kind of created a sort of like a hollowed out cavity inside the connector. And this creates just a lot more surface area, simply just a lot more surface area just because of the geometry. And with a lot more surface area, there's a lot more resistance to the buildup of dust and dirt and debris in certain harsh applications. I mean, I'm sure a lot of our listeners have been inside factories and plants, and some areas are really clean, some are really dirty. And a lot of this dust, depending on what machining process is being done, it could be conductive. It could be metal dust, could be metal particles, metal shavings. And if that builds up in the connector, over time, it'll cause a short. So really the increased surface area inside the connector will really extend the life of the connector, especially in these harsh and dirty applications.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Good. Good. So, what else can you talk about when you look at the external shape of this new connector head that's being used?
So one more thing is for the angle connectors. So traditionally they're perfectly perpendicular 90 degrees. Well, for the new design, the angle connectors are going to have a slightly reduced bend. They're going to have about 100-degree bend instead of 90 degrees. And really, that's for a couple different reasons. Well, one, like we've been talking about so far, is really to extend the life of the connector. With a more generous bend, there's going to be less stress and strain on the inner conductors since they're so sensitive. But not only that, it really makes it easier for the user because now you're going to have just a little bit more space whenever a user is tightening these or loosening these by hand and installing them in some kind of tight application.
Yeah, that's very nice. That's very nice. Having to do a large number of those is always a task that I don't find particularly pleasant. And I really want to say that the hex nut in combination with the knurled nut is nice because you could get the threads started and then use a torque tool. There's a specific torque tool for M12 connectors and it makes it really easy to use both together.
Exactly. So we have tons of options for the user. We really just want to make it better for the user too. So, like you said, a wrench, the M12 tool, or by hand.
Yeah. Loom catch. We do something with that as well, of course.
Right. So our connectors already had a loom catch for someone to install some kind of cable protection on the actual connector. But with this new design, since we're doing all these new features, we decided to make the loom catch just a little bit more prominent, making it just even that much easier for a user to install some cable protection on the cord set or pigtail.
And have the protection hold on to the connector much better.
Exactly right. So the more prominent loom catch, it'll, like you said, it'll hold on to the protection a lot better.
Okay. There was one other part that I seem to remember from the design, and that is once the nut is applied properly, there's sort of a visual feedback that everything is tightened down correctly. Can you allude to that, please?
Oh, definitely. So one thing I forgot to mention is the contact carrier. It used to be black, but now it's green, and it's PNF green. And when you fully tighten the nut onto another connector, you can actually see the back end of the contact carrier behind the nut. And if you can see it and it's nice and perpendicular, it's not crooked or anything. If you can see it, then that means you tighten the nut fully and properly.
That is ingenious.
It's a really good visual cue, a really good indicator of just whenever it's tightened appropriately.
Yep.
I mean, a user might be tightening tons of these at once if they're installing a bunch of sensors on an I/O block or a junction block or something like that. So it just makes it that much easier for our users.
Yep. Understand. We also do offer M12 connectors with LEDs.
That's right. So
And what's different here?
with the new design, we just added some newer LEDs that are a little bit brighter. So especially for maybe hard to see applications, or if it's dark, or just applications where a user really needs that visual cue of whether they're getting power or a signal from their sensor. So the new LEDs are a little brighter just for those specific applications where a user needs another visual cue, another indicator.
Well, it's what I find amazing is how many little things one can do to such a little part, and at the end come up with a truly great product.
Definitely. And all these little changes, they add up, and really they're greater than the sum of their parts, really,
Yep.
because in the end we have a much better product overall.
So before we close out, approvals. What's going on at the approvals end?
So since we have much better control over the design and manufacturing of the new design, these new connectors are going to be UL listed, fully UL listed for our cord sets.
Excellent. Okay, so here's a task for you. Think about the 5 words or less that we want our listeners to have as a takeaway. In the meantime, while you think about it, I'll try to summarize what we talked about, and I hope I won't forget too much. So we're talking about a new design M8, M12 connector line where we capture the O-ring for higher quality product. The O-ring will stay in place even after a long time. We have new locking features, a new locking nut where we can use a tool, a wrench, our hands to tighten it down. I want to call them sort of 90-degree connectors are no longer 90 degrees. The angled ones, they're now 100 for better internal cable guiding, less strain on the cable. Again, longer quality connection and also easier on the operators. We completely redesigned the contact carrier, which is a critical part in every connector. It has better grip of the contacts. It also provides much longer grip distances. On the illuminated versions, we utilize a new LED with much higher brightness. And then we improved on the loom catch to give an even more positive hold onto or attachment between the loom, the cable protection, and the connector. And ultimately, this new design is UL listed. So, did I forget anything critical, Eduardo?
No, I don't think so. I think you covered everything, Helga. One thing I want to add is a lot of these small features, you can't really see them with the naked eye. A lot of them are internal, so it might not be as obvious, some of the changes, but this new design, it's overall just a much better quality design.
Very good. So, what are your 5 words of takeaway, please?
Most feature-rich M8 and M12 connectors.
All right, almost. One more, but that's fine. That's fine. No problem there. Eduardo, as always, I really thank you very much for stopping by, and I hope our listeners got something out of this. Please don't hesitate and ask anybody within PNF if you need more about these connectors. You need to know more about the connectors. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Pepperl+Fuchs Plugged In. Please subscribe to our channel and never miss hearing about the latest innovations in factory automation.